Greetings, everyone. I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. As you can tell from the title up there, I'm continuing my trek through the episodes of Batman, the animated series, the classic cartoon from the 90s. It was a big part of my childhood, and for probably a decent amount of people watching this, most likely yours. We are in excuse me, episode 21 of season 1. This is Feet of Clay, part 2. Now, this episode picks up directly after part 1 ends. Bruce Wayne is in custody due to the fact that he was framed by Clayface, and people think he's the one who attacked Lucius Fox. Now, he gets out on bail right at the beginning. Goes into his car with everybody asking him questions, and he quickly changes into the Batsuit because he's got to figure out how Daggett and Clayface are doing this. And he goes out and starts his bat business. Now, Clayface is back at his house with his assistant, and he is really hating himself, hating life right now, because of how he views his now monstrous existence following Daggett trying to kill him using the formula that he was dependent on. Because now he just sees himself as a big, hulking mass of formula-ridden flesh. And it's there, while he's having a pity party, that both him and his assistant discover, wait a minute, with how much they poured in me, not only did it change me like this, but my entire body can shapeshift. He discovers this inadvertently because he's walking past a bunch of posters that have pictures from films he made. Now, before this, they're going into what led to him getting in deep with Daggett, and that is he had a bad accident that disfigured him, and Daggett approached him with like, hey, you can still do these films. I got a formula here. This thing, it can do in moments what a plastic surgery you would need to fix this does in months. So he took it, and of course eventually got hooked on it because he had to keep using it, and he was in deep with Daggett. But apparently he did a lot of his better films after it, and he's looking at a lot of the photos, and as he does, his body changes. The assistant notices, then Hagen notices. He's like, yeah. And of course he comes up with a plan to get revenge on Daggett. They're going to kidnap one of his henchmen, and then he'll get close to him. Now, when I saw this plan, I was like, is he going to really get the one person Daggett was talking with that seemed to be a germaphobe and not act like a germaphobe, and that's going to tip off Daggett and be like, you didn't play your hand good enough there, actor. But no, I think they just introduced that kind of to be a little red herring to where you think they're going to go one way and they swerve you. The proper way to do a swerve, bro, and they did it in a half-hour children's television show. But that guy's germophobia does play a part. And that is that Batman uses against him during his interrogation, where he chases him in the hospital because Daggett sends him to try to finish the job with Lucius. And he chases him into a room that has a bunch of diseases in it, and he gets info from him. Now, instead of you impersonating that guy, Clayface impersonates a random person and confronts Daggett during a press conference. You know, really pushes him. As the questions keep coming out, you're like, oh yeah, that's Clayface. And then, boom, shows himself. Now, Batman intervenes and keeps Clayface from killing Daggett. And it ends up in a scene where they're in a control room with a bunch of screens. And on the screens go a lot of the photos from Clayface's old films. And of course this causes him to freak out. He electrocutes himself. And it looks like Clayface is dead, but no, he faked out. And this is a good ending for this Clayface episode, where it looks like he is dead and fakes himself out. And in the last shot we see just how he escaped, in that he is starting to get more control over his transformations. Because he describes it like a muscle, which is a pretty apt way to describe his transformation power. Because he can hold the muscle, but then if he looks at, say, photos of himself or he gets distracted, he can lose it. Which as an actor is probably bad, considering he has his own makeup here. If he was in the middle of a scene and something distracted him and he shifted back, he's like, damn it! The blooper reel for that would be hilarious, though. Like, you could just imagine like that one from A Bug's Life. This is the 15th take, Transforms. I could not work like this. I will be in my trailer. The ultimate prima donna showman would be Matt Hagen if he actually did not turn to crime in this whole thing. Now, showing that he has a little bit more active control, or appears to, is a nice little way to end it. But plus, it whole ties into his whole thing as an actor, because he says that his death scene is probably the best death scene he could have asked for. I mean, that's not the exact line, but that kind of sums it up. That right there is like, because I already knew he wasn't dead from knowing that he appears in at least one later episode further down the line. But it's one of those ones that watching in the moment, like, let's just see how they're going to approach this. And they did it pretty well. Now, the animation for this episode is excellent, and one scene that really jumped out at me is the scene where Daggett and his henchmen are talking above these vats of green fluid that are related to their formula. And part of that is due to the studio that animated this episode. That was Tokyo Movie Shinsha. And part of that is that they ignored the color instructions that was given to them, and they made their own color palette, which helps this episode stand out from an artistic standpoint, and a lot of the stuff just like pops out. This is what Bruce Timm had to say. I think when he shipped them Clayface, they said to themselves, they think they know everything, but we'll show them how to do this show. We'll change Batman's colors. We'll do special key treatments on the villains when they're walking over the green vat. We'll blow them away. If that's their revenge, thank you for proving us wrong. I was happy with that episode. Now, part of the reason it pops is because they look three-dimensional. And just the color and all that. It looks like they're rotoscoped. And then, of course, the way that the camera warps around Daggett's face when he turns towards the camera. It's an excellent way to mix the colors, and it goes off. So I'm glad Tim at least gave him some credit there when he proved him wrong. Shows that if a studio knows what it's doing and they kind of ignore it, they can come off doing something good. If they don't really know what they're doing, as we've seen a couple times already, and not as much. Now, I mentioned I think I mentioned in the previous episode about the little thing between Clayface and his assistant. Here, there's a couple more moments with it. It is very subtle, but you can definitely see that the writers were influenced a little bit by actors from the golden age of Hollywood who were in the closet due to how it was viewed in those days. I mean, we all know there were people in Hollywood back then who were openly gay. I mean, James Whale is probably the best example I could think of. And of course, you know that. You could read a lot of that into some of his films, like Bride of Frankenstein. You can definitely see it. Friend for me. That whole thing with the monsters storyline. Here, it's very subtle, but some of the interactions between Clayface and his assistants, you can definitely see it. Mainly the one where they're alone in their apartment. The assistant says a few things to him, and then Hagen reacts violently towards him. Right there, you could kind of see it as him trying to reject his sexuality, trying to keep hidden everything. I mean, there's people that have done more and more better ways that it can be dived into it than I could do right here without actually doing my own deep dive on it. But reviewing it, I got to bring it up. It is there, and to add to that, I do think it's kind of goes hand in hand with it that at the very end, the last shot, it starts with his assistant walking away, basically saying, burying that part of his life, saying goodbye. Hagen is watching him, and he's disguised as a woman. There's a lot you could probably read into that, especially as he starts laughing maniacally. It could be that he's laughing at him, but it could also be just, no, hey, I escaped, and even you buy my performance over here. Of course, you could also read into it just the stereotypical villainous laughter. There's a couple ways you could view it. And it kind of adds a little bit to his tragedy in a way. Look, whether he is supposed to actually be gay in the show, I think that's one of those things definitely open to interpretation, but it is definitely there as subtext, and it has a little bit of power to it, especially since the show has that quasi-40s vibe to it. The score for the episode, once again knocked out of the park there. The voice acting, excellent. Especially Ron Perlman as Clayface. You really feel the tortured soul of him when he thinks all is lost. You really get that vengeful side of him. A little bit of that abusive side in the scene where he knocks his assistant to the ground. And of course, when he's doing the fake death, you really believe that he is acting his death, but in a way that nobody's going to go, I don't believe you. And of course, the scene where they're trying to plot Lucius Fox's murder, you really believe the maniacal aspects there from the characters. It's all around a good episode, and this is a great episode actually. And this is one of the two-parters, like with Two-Face, where that one you definitely feel it's a two-parter, but they each feel a little different due to the fact that each is a different side of Two-Face, before or after. This one you definitely feel they deserve to be a two-parter because set up in the first half, payoff in this one. So definitely you don't want to skip either one, and this is definitely a two-parter in this series you definitely need to watch. And that's really all there is to say about this. I don't got much more to say. While watching, nothing really else stood out that I haven't mentioned already. Now, the next episode is going to be interesting just for a historical perspective because it's going to be the first appearance of a certain character that went on after this to appear in the comics and other iterations, such as the DC Extended Universe. And probably in the future she'll be in the DC Universe that they're doing on screen now. And of course that's going to be Harley Quinn. But that is something we'll talk about next time. Till then, everybody.